Democrats must figure out why so many voters still say to them, "You're good enough, you're smart enough, but doggone it, we don't like you." But Democrats were supposed to flip the Senate and didn't. Supposed to flip state legislatures, not a one. And they lost seats in the House in a year that was so much about making people aware of racism. Their share of minority votes went down. The message to Democrats from so much of the country seems to be, we don't like Trump, but we still can't bring ourselves to vote for you. Liberals can either write off half the country as irredeemable, or they can ask, what is it about a D next to a candidate's name that makes it so toxic? And Democrats are the party of every hypersensitive social justice warrior, woke bullshit story in the news. They're the party that disappears people or tries to make them apologize for ridiculous things. Cite stories, big and small, that are endlessly on people's news feeds, that add up to a constant drip, drip, drip of these people are nuts. Democrats kept saying in the campaign, you can't possibly think Trump is preferable to what we're selling. And many voters keep saying, yes, we can. In fact, our primary reason voting for him is to create a bulwark against you, because your side thinks silence is violence and looting is not. Because you're the party of chasing speakers off college campuses and making everyone walk on eggshells and replacing let's not see color with let's see it always and everywhere, formerly the position of the Ku Klux Klan. It would be so easy to win elections if we would just drop this shit.
The spotlight is growing on the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, better known as ACORN. The group has recently been investigated in a number of states for submitting false voter registration cards. But now the Associated Press has learned the FBI is investigating whether ACORN is behind a nationwide effort to commit voter registration fraud.
We need to know the full extent of Senator Obama's relationship with ACORN, who is now on the verge of maybe perpetrating one of the greatest frauds in voter history in this country.
The only involvement I've had with ACORN was I represented them alongside the U.S. Justice Department in making Illinois implement a motor voter law that helped people get registered at DMVs.
Who was running this national project called Project Vote contacted me. He said, we need somebody to help organize voters to make sure that they turn out in the polls in the general election. And so I started working as the director of Project Vote here in Chicago, and our task was simple. It was to get disenfranchised communities, minority communities, low-income communities to turn out to vote.
Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich has been arrested and charged in what the U.S. Attorney's Office is calling a corruption crime spree. Blagojevich, a Democrat, is charged with conspiring to sell the U.S. Senate seat left vacant by President Elect Barak Obama to the highest bidder. Federal investigators bugged Blagojevich's campaign offices and tapped his home phone. An FBI affidavit says the governor was intercepted conspiring to sell or trade the Senate seat for personal benefits for himself or his wife.
In a bold move, embattled Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich appointed a senator to fill Barack Obama's former United States Senate seat. Federal authorities arrested Blagojevich in early December and accused him of trying to sell the open Senate position, among other things.
Please don't allow the allegations against me to taint this good and honest man.
President-elect Barack Obama is calling for the Illinois governor to resign. Democratic Governor Rod Blagojevich was arrested Tuesday, accused of scheming to sell Obama's Senate seat to the highest bidder.
Governor Blagojevich is arguing that he's being railroaded.
I'm not even getting a fair trial. They're just hanging me.
In the midst of a public relations blitz, Blagojevich likened himself to a cowboy wrongly accused of horse stealing.
One of the cowboys said, let's hang him. And the other cowboy said, hold on, before we hang him, let's first give him a fair trial. Then we'll hang him.
Just say something real quick?
Yeah.
Elvis appeared before Madison Square Garden here in New York, and the first thing he said to the press was, first of all, I'd like to say, innocent of all charges. He gave all that background, and I want the people to know those are false allegations, and I write about that in the book. I'm going to prove my innocence. I'll be fully vindicated. And a very terrible thing, an unfair thing has happened to Patty and me, to our daughters and to our family, and the people of Illinois who put their trust in me, because they chose me in every election, hadn't lost one. And they chose me because they trusted me, and I trusted them to make the decision. It's very hard when you're falsely accused of things, and you have this tremendous desire to let everybody know I didn't do what they say.
Former Governor Rod Blagojevich. Here we go. Why exactly are you here? Honest to God. What?
Well, you know, I've been wanting to be on your show in the worst way for the longest time.
Well, you're on in the worst way, believe me. I saw you on The View. I saw you on the Rachel Maddow show. I saw you on the Today Show. I saw you on, I think, every other show that is in production currently. And the more you talked and the more you repeated your innocence, the more I said to myself, oh, this guy's guilty.
And the alternative is to sit in some corner, hide, cower in the fetal position, and assume and accept what people are saying that you did. And you didn't do it, and I didn't do it.
Right.
And at the appropriate time, I'll have a chance to prove that.
Right. So why not wait till the appropriate time?
Well, I get that. I appreciate that.
Trial. Anything?
No, your audience obviously likes you. Everything you say, they laugh at.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that funny, with all due respect.
Well, what?
I was thinking how nice it was to be able to be part of this sort of healthy camaraderie between a bunch of guys who are now on the same team. Coming out of politics and government, it's a whole new experience. I'll tell you what you guys think. I should have had you guys on some politics.
See, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
First thing I would have told you like this. Hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. Rob. Hang up the phone, man. Call me from the payphone. Brothers know. Call me from the payphone. Man, what's that clicking? Rod Blagojevich, he's the elephant in the room. There's got to be something you want people to know about you. You must have some information that the rest of the world doesn't have for you to put yourself out there like that.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So, Governor, did you win?
I never predict elections. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we've worked real hard. I think we've worked as a team. So I think with all the challenges and the ups and downs, I think I like what we did.
What do you think of your team?
I thought they were great. I thought.
To his trial and then his retrial, Rod Blagojevich seems to personify the unexpected. Today, he is about to put his life behind bars behind him and rejoin his wife and 2 daughters. Former Governor Rod Blagojevich will soon be a free man. President Trump has commuted his 14-year sentence.
We have commuted the sentence of Rod Blagojevich. He served 8 years in jail. It's a long time.
Blagojevich, a popular politician, was first elected in 2002. Easily won re-election 4 years later. But when Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, things began to unravel for him. As governor, Blago had the power to appoint the next senator to fill Obama's seat. Recorded phone conversations by the feds, Blagojevich infamously was heard saying, "He's got this thing."
I've got this thing, and it's golden.
And one of the politicians trying to make a play for that Senate seat was Jesse Jackson Jr. No way, said Blago.
I don't believe him. I don't trust him.
In short time, the U.S. attorney at the time, Patrick Fitzgerald, would announce yet another Illinois governor was indicted. In April 2009, most of the charges were related to attempts to sell that Senate seat. But on August 17, 2010, he was convicted on only one of the 24 federal charges, a charge of lying to the FBI, and the jury was hung on the 23 other counts.
So I'm going to keep my remarks kind of short.
I don't know him very well. I've met him a couple of times. He was on for a short while on The Apprentice years ago. Seemed like a very nice person. Don't know him, but he served 8 years in jail. There's a long time to go. Many people disagree with the sentence. He's a Democrat. He's not a Republican.
Trump had talked of commuting his sentence before, but passed. Today, the time arrived for the former 40th governor of Illinois. In his comments, President Trump let it be known that in his eyes, Rod Blagojevich was a sympathetic figure.
It was a prosecution by the same people, Comey, Fitzpatrick, the same group. So he'll be able to go back home with his family after serving 8 years in jail. That was a tremendously powerful, ridiculous sentence, in my opinion.
It's been a long time since I've shaved with a normal razor, and takes a little practice. I'm sorry about that. I got to keep dabbing the blood. Let me just say a couple of things. First of all, the obvious I want to state, and that I know I speak for Patty and Amy and Annie, and obviously for me. We want to express our most profound and everlasting gratitude to President Trump. How do you properly thank someone who's given you back the freedom that was stolen from you? He didn't have to do this. He's a Republican president. I was a Democratic governor. And doing this does nothing to help his politics. President Trump is a man who is tough and outspoken, but he also has a kind heart. And this is an act of kindness, and I also believe it's the beginning of the process to actually turn an injustice into a justice. The buildings behind that fence where the inmates live and sleep are squalid places. They're cold and dark like tombs. There were about 900 inmates there. Drug dealers, cartel members, gangbangers, bank robbers. There were men there who committed murder, con artists, a lot of sex offenders. About 2% of the population were in the so-called white-collar category. Our president is, he's tough and outspoken, and he has the courage to challenge the old way.
That's right.
He's the one who's actually fighting to bring real change. That's why he gets so much pushback. But notwithstanding being tough, he's also a man with a kind heart.
That's right.
He sees wrong and he tries to right it, just like he did in the case of Alice Marie Johnson. You know who she is, the grandmother from Alabama who served 21 years in prison on a life sentence as a first-time nonviolent drug offender. A life sentence as a first-time nonviolent drug offender.
The first step, let it all of them come home.
Alice Marie Johnson's case is probably one of the better illustrations that shows how the federal criminal justice system disproportionately discriminates against African Americans and people of color, and how the 1994 crime bill has led to the over-sentencing and to the creation of what the author Michelle Alexander has called the new Jim Crow in America.
The year 1994.
The next thing I saw was people falling down and gunshots.
America's cities facing soaring crime. A new law seen by many as the best way to fight back.
Let us roll up our sleeves to roll back this awful tide of violence.
That 1994 crime bill, it did contribute to mass incarceration in our country.
The other big piece of legislation on Capitol Hill tonight is the crime bill.
But we also have to have an organized effort against gangs, just as in a previous generation we had an organized effort against the mob. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel, and the president has asked the FBI to launch a very concerted effort against gangs everywhere.
It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
What's your view on the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities? Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill went and voted. The Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And it didn't. The crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories. Two things. It had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill, but it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it, the assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems. And you have 93 out of every 100 people in jail now is in a state prison, not in a federal prison, because they built more prisons. I also wrote into that bill a thing called drug courts. I don't believe anybody should be going to jail for drug use. They should be going into mandatory rehabilitation. We should be building rehab centers to have these people housed.
And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate.
Can't raise kids in an environment where this is all they know and they're surrounded by it, and then think that somehow they are going to be immune from the influences that they're seeing every day. Right. It's what you were saying about your brother, just like, oh, well, my big bro, he's going to prison. Then he starts thinking, I'll probably end up at some point going to prison and I'll be okay.
Well, as he has said, look, we have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's prisoners. We spend $80 billion a year on prison. Those are the statistics. What the president wanted to do by going to El Reno is put a spotlight on the people.
I joined with a group of people in the House to provide for changing the system from punishment to rehabilitation. Along with a guy named Arlen Specter, who you may remember, I wrote the Second Chance Act.
In the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But we did a study. And we determined what happens if, for the first, second, third offense, for any crime in the criminal justice system, at the federal level, if you're a black man, it's the first time you committed robbery. How long would you go to jail on average? If you're a white man, how long? Black man would go to jail on average 13 years. White man, 2 years.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill. You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. And in fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
And by the way, we talk about this mostly in terms of Black Lives Matter. Black lives really do matter. But the problem is institutional racism in America. That's the overarching problem that still exists.
Federal agents sent to restore order in Portland have poured petrol on disorder. What was a largely peaceful protest has escalated into violence.
It's the first time that it's driven crowds away, but it doesn't look like they've gone. Certainly, it doesn't seem like either side is going to give up anytime soon.
It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society.
And set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
He's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up. Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up
questions. If this stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody's
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue.
Laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race.
Well, the people who use America, corporations who use America, are groups of people who use America for a stepping stone for more powerful position in the rest of the world. I mean, face it, there's people who are trying to gain control of the entire world now.
Senator Biden, it's nice to have you here. As the youngest member of the Senate, the one, therefore, who may expect the longest career there, I wonder if you'd say to us, since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected, why should people think that the system produces corrupt results when there you are?
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt.
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt.
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt.
But thank you for that, though. The system does produce corruption, and I think implicit in the system is corruption, when in fact, whether or not you can run for public office, and it costs a great deal of money to run for the United States Senate, even from a small state like Delaware, you have to go to those people who have money, and they always want something. I think it's the most degrading experience in the world to have to go out and ask for money, because you know that unless you accidentally agree with the position taken by the person or group that has the money, that you run the risk of deciding whether or not you're going to prostitute yourself to give the answer you know they want to hear in order to get funded to run for that office. And it's coincidental in many instances when in fact you happen to agree with where they are. I'm Hunter Biden.
And I'm Ashley Biden.
Joe Biden is our dad.
And Beau is our brother.
We want to tell you what kind of president our dad will be.
He will be tough.
And honest.
Caring and principled.
He'll listen. He'll be there when you need him.
He'll tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it.
He'll never let you down.
He'll be rock steady.
The strongest shoulder you can ever lean on.
He'll beam with pride every time you succeed.
He'll make your grandkids feel that what they've got to say matters.
You're on pretty much everyone's lips now.
Yeah.
By the way, whatever happened to Hunter? Where the hell is he?
It went to Hunter Biden.
It was Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden's.
I've gone through my own struggles.
In and out of rehab 7-8 times.
Say it nicer to me. Sought treatment for an issue like
Sought
most
treatment
people.
For substance abuse issues
so
7 or 8
insensitive.
times. I'm so sorry.
Hunter Biden joined his father, Air Force Two, takes a trip to Asia. They stop in China. Literally less than 2 weeks later, Hunter Biden's company inked a $1 billion private equity deal with a subsidiary of the Chinese government's Bank of China. As Peter Schweitzer pointed out in Secret Empires, this was a deal unlike any other Western firm got. It went to Hunter Biden, who had virtually no experience or expertise in China or private equity. You can ask yourself, now why would Hunter Biden get such a sweetheart deal, $1 billion? Then it became $1.5 billion.
We were told to look at Joe Biden as the model of integrity. We all know about Joe's son, Hunter Biden. A corrupt Ukrainian oligarch put Hunter on the board of his gas company, even though he had no experience in Ukraine or in the energy sector. None. Yet he was paid millions to do nothing. He only had one qualification that mattered. He was the son of the man in charge of distributing U.S. aid to Ukraine.
You didn't have any extensive knowledge about natural gas or Ukraine itself, though.
No, but I think that I had as much knowledge as anybody else that was on the board, if not more.
In the list that you gave me of the reasons why you're on that board, you did not list the fact that you were the son of the vice president.
Of course, yeah. No.
What role do you think that played?
I think that it is impossible for me to be on any of the boards that I just mentioned without saying that I'm the son of the Vice President of the United States.
You were paid $50,000 a month for your position?
Look, I'm a private citizen. One thing that I don't have to do is sit here and open my kimono as it relates to how much money I make or did or didn't. But it's all been reported.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life that if my last name wasn't Biden.
Why?
And recently reported information revealed that a few months after Hunter Biden, even when it remained under investigation for corruption, and it gets worse, that very same company was being investigated by a Ukrainian prosecutor. Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, threatened to withhold aid to Ukraine unless that same prosecutor was fired.
And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
President Trump,
and I have to respond to that.
Please,
because look,
very quickly.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this where you're
exactly
going?
What
this is where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
Rachel Maddow, you want to see how bad it's gotten? Someone put this together from just one episode of her show from last March, and I'm going to play it for you. Here we go.
Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, the Russian, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russian against us. Russians against the U.S. The Russian government scheme. The Russians, Vladimir Putin, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia.
Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming
than what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is announcing new measures that the social media company is taking before the November election. Now, in this plan that's rolling out today, Facebook promises to flag or in some cases remove misinformation about voting related to the coronavirus. It will also limit political ads in the week before the election.
Well, how are you handling the President of the United States to let him know and let people who are using your platform that this is misinformation, is it not?
I certainly think that anyone who's saying that the election is going to be fraudulent
I think that's problematic.
In the last 2 days, we've seen a remarkable development. We have seen big tech, we've seen Twitter and Facebook actively interfering in this election in a way that has no precedent in the history of our country. Yesterday, the New York Post broke a story alleging serious corruption of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden concerning Ukraine. The allegations in the New York Post story, if true, indicate that Vice President Biden lied when he said he had never discussed his son's business dealings. That story, once the New York Post broke it, was blocked by Twitter and Facebook.
You can censor Politico. Presumably you can censor the New York Times or any other media outlet. Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear? And why do you persist in behaving as a Democratic super PAC, silencing views to the contrary of your political beliefs?
Well, we're not doing that, and this is why I opened.
Thank you, Senator.
So I hear the concerns and acknowledge them, but we want to fix it with more transparency.
1994 crime bill passed by my fellow Democrats before I got to Congress. Fortunately, as soon as President Trump learned of the injustice against Alice Marie, he immediately put a stop to it, and he sent her home to her family. And fortunately, because this is a president who gets things done, through his leadership and with the help of organizations like Cut 50, President Trump was able to build the necessary bipartisan support to pass the historic First Step Act, a new law that begins the process of reforming a broken criminal justice system and putting an end to the racist injustice caused by that racist 1994 crime bill.
This afternoon, we also have an exciting announcement to ensure former inmates can overcome some of the greatest barriers to employment, including limited access to transportation, which is needed for interviews and for jobs. To make this announcement, I'd like to invite up a very special guest and a powerful advocate for not only justice reform, but just a good person, Kim Kardashian West.
But first up, he's not only the attorney who represents Stormy Daniels, he's Donald Trump's worst nightmare, Michael Avenatti. The reason why liberals love you and Stormy, who's, I think, acquitted herself very well. She looks very credible and she seems like a good person. Okay. But let's be honest, the whole reason that we're in love with you and Stormy is because we think you guys are the tip of the spear that's going to take down Donald Trump. It's all about that. Now, I know she's just your client, and this is one case for you, but walk me through how our dreams can come true.
But make no mistake about it, it's locked and loaded.
I must ask you the $64,000 question. Are you going to run for president?
You're going to Iowa, right? You're going to Iowa.
I'm going to be in Ohio next week, in Iowa, and here's what I'll say. A lot of people have approached me and suggested that I run for president, and here's what I know. The Democrats have to nominate somebody that can actually beat Donald Trump. That is the number one thing.
We're running out of time. Yes or no?
Here's what I'm going to say.
Lawyer Michael Avenatti sat down with CBS News for his first interview since being arrested on charges of extortion and wire fraud. He faces almost 100 years in prison if he's convicted on all of the charges.
Prosecutors are saying that you committed extortion, that you committed wire fraud and bank fraud in California. Did you try to extort Nike for millions of dollars?
No, and any suggestion is absolutely absurd. Nike knew from the very first moment that I had any contact with Nike that I was insisting that the truth about what Nike had done be disclosed to federal prosecutors and investigators.
Avenatti was not acting as an attorney. A suit and tie doesn't mask the fact that at its core, this was an old-fashioned shakedown.
They allege Michael Avenatti attempted to use his platform to blackmail the apparel giant. The complaint does suggest that you asked for up to $20 million, 1.5 for your client, and at least $20 million, and that you requested you be retained to do an internal investigation and that if not you and they hired someone else, you stand to make more money.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the specifics of this, but what I will say is the way this has been framed is not accurate.
Michelle and I decided that we had to build the Obama Presidential Center on the South Side in historic Jackson Park. It will be a place for all seasons with winding landscapes, a sledding hill, and quiet spaces to read or reflect. The campus includes a museum, a library building, an athletic center, and a place we're calling the Forum, a public meeting space where people of all backgrounds can come together for programming, training, take in a performance in the auditorium.
And last but not least, Jesse Smollett. You don't want to miss out on this cuteness over here, so I'm sorry for those for blocking it. I'll be gone in a second.
Smollett still has what appears to be a noose around his neck.
Do you want to take it off or anything? Yeah, I do. I just want to see.
Smollett told police he was assaulted by two masked men, yelling racist and homophobic slurs.
They called me a. They called me a. There's no which way you cut it. I don't need some MAGA hat as the cherry on top of some racist sundae. I can just assume, I come really, really hard against 45. I come really, really hard against his administration. And I don't hold my tongue.
I want to ask you about Jesse Smollett.
I think that's horrible. It doesn't get worse, as far as I'm concerned.
To suggest that lynching would only be a lynching if someone's heart was pulled out and produced and displayed to someone else is ridiculous.
This bill would expand the meaning of lynching to include any bodily injury, including a cut, an abrasion, or a bruise.
The top prosecutor at the office that ultimately decided not to prosecute Smollett was actively seeking to help the defendant. And this was all set in motion by Michelle Obama's former chief of staff. Well, the Chicago Police Union is calling for a federal investigation into Fox's handling of the Smollett case.
You know what I'm talking about? Juicy Smouillet. He's a very famous French actor. One night, he was in Chicago late at night and was the victim this shit was like international news. And everybody was furious. And for some reason, African Americans, we were like oddly quiet. We were so quiet about this shit that the gay community started accusing African American community of being homophobic for not supporting him. What they didn't understand is that we were supporting him with our silence. Because we understood that this nigga was clearly lying.
Folks, it's me, Donald Trump. You're welcome.
I think he needs help. I don't know. There's a lot of wonderful dark places he could go. By the way, this is going to be in the press. It'll be horrible. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
you to.
I want to clarify, I'm not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it's been a while. And maybe it's time.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yes.
I mean,
please.
I've been listening to all of this about Trump and watching how this conversations go in the U.S. And I have one question about it. I mean, what do you think will happen if that comes to pass? What do you think will happen to these people that have identified with Trump? And because it looks to me, from an outsider's perspective, that your country is polarizing in a way that's not good, and that there's all these people that elected him and that are identified with him, and they're not taking this well, you know. And so, well, they're not. It's not. And you need to have respect for the rest of your citizens, and if your country isn't going to pull itself apart, then.
If he was just a regular Republican president with Republican policies, I would say you'd have a point. But what is so alarming is the assault on democratic norms, what we were talking about here today. Things like threatening to put people in jail, threatening to put journalists in jail, wanting military parades, praising dictators, wanting to be a dictator. I mean...
But I'm concerned about the dialogue in the United States around the presidency pulling people farther and farther apart. It has nothing to do with the behavior of Trump. I think this is an independent issue. You can say positive or negative things about Trump as his mind.
But he's only there because they support him. You see,
I know.
That's the thing.
That's the issue. That's the issue. Is they did support him. And
without the circus, he's just a lonely clown.
Yeah.
But he has these people in Congress who are enablers, and this base that it is a cult of personality, not unlike dictatorships we've seen in the past. I mean, he said once, famously, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any fans.
Yes.
And he has proved that to be almost true. I mean, we cannot imagine what he would do where they would turn on him, because I don't know what that would be. I don't think it's anything, because whatever it was, he would just say, well, it's fake news.
But okay, so imagine he's impeached, just for the sake of argument.
Impeached or convicted.
Okay, either of those. It still seems to me that it leaves you with the problem of what do you do with the disaffected 40% that are going to be very unhappy about this, independent of Trump's behavior.
Kind of like the Sunnis after we kicked over Saddam.
Well, that's a hell of a precedent to cite.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
Cities burned. There was a shit ton of the populace that was Nazified. I mean, like, Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating people to not be Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, we're probably going to have to do the same thing here. And that's kind of what Bernie's like, hey, free education for everybody, because we're going to have to teach you not to be a Nazi. There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than what the CIA has told us that they were. Like, people were actually paid a living wage in gulags. They had conjugal visits in gulags. Gulags were actually meant for re-education.
As hundreds of thousands of Muslims disappear into giant secure facilities, China has begun taking a few selected journalists inside. These are places where adults wear uniforms, but sleep up to 10 a room, sharing a toilet, with no idea how many months or years it will be before they can return to their families. If they don't want.
Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, who sits on the House Intel Committee, reportedly has ties to a Chinese spy, that alleged agent apparently trying to influence American politicians. And now Republican lawmakers are demanding answers.
Eric Swalwell, who has used his office to promote Beijing's talking points, almost word for word, ones that matter, by the way. A man who admits to a close personal relationship with an actual Chinese spy who helped him get elected to Congress, raised money for him, and put an intern, probably another spy, in his office. That man continues to serve on the House Intelligence Committee, where he has unrestricted access to classified information. How is this happening?
The Uyghur situation is shockingly undercovered.
Oh my God. Well, it demonstrates that when people said never again, they were full of crap. They're just full of crap. I mean, it's just not true.
This is one area where the United States should absolutely be taking a leading role. It is obvious that China is a nefarious actor. China has been stealing our technology. The Chinese government is attempting to extend its rule of tyranny over Hong Kong. They just subjected 7.5 million people to their direct tyranny in violation of treaty. And the response has basically been muted from the Western world. And did you see that video of the Chinese ambassador in Britain being asked on the BBC about that tape?
The Chinese government has sent more than 1 million Uyghurs, a Muslim minority ethnic group, to centres like this for what it calls voluntary job training. US officials have previously described them as concentration camps, and newly leaked cables reinforce reports that they are centres for forced ideological and behavioural re-education.
No, I didn't.
It's fantastic. So the BBC interviewer shows him the tape of the people being pushed onto trains, right? And he says, "What is this?" And the Chinese ambassador says, "I can't see it. I'm not sure what you're talking about." He's literally saying that the screen is huge. It's right behind him. Like he's looking right at it. And he acts as though he can't see it. And then he starts talking about the natural beauty of the region.
This is almost certainly over northern China, over Xinjiang. Can you tell us what is happening here?
I cannot see, this video. This is not the first time you show me. I still remember last year you showed me what is happening in Xinjiang.
In Xinjiang, exactly.
But let me tell you this. Xinjiang, have you been to Xinjiang yourself?
No, I never have.
You know, Xinjiang is regarded as the most beautiful place in Xinjiang. There's a Chinese saying, you do not know how big China is.
Ambassador, that is not beautiful coverage, however, is it?
Right? He won't deal with it. He won't explain what it is. And the rest of the world is just like, well, you know what.
9:30 next day, we met at the hospital gate and headed towards the Western Mountain execution ground. My chief surgeons then ordered and guided me, extracted the liver and took kidneys. The man was alive. He tried to resist my scalpel cut, but too weak to avoid my action. I thought I was carrying my duty to eliminate the enemy of the state. It is not acceptable that a normal buy one get one free shopping pattern can be seen in organ transplantation. Pre-date for your heart transplantation means that they make someone dead for you. Giving away organs to promote business means they have organ of plenty.
Right. Bernie doesn't get the nomination, or it goes to the second round at the DNC convention. Milwaukee, word. It'll start in Milwaukee, and then when the police push back on that, in other cities.
We are out here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in front of one of several structure fires, this one being an office store on the street. The heat is so intense, we're going to go ahead and we're going to walk back this direction. To my left, you can see we're in front of a car lot which has been completely vandalized by members.
And if your speech is calling for the elimination of people based on race or gender or religious, like for whatever reason, like things that people can't change, then you should expect a violent reaction. And you deserve a violent reaction.
When a man standing in front of this parking garage was shot. Not much is known publicly about what led to this moment, but the victim has been linked to a pro-Trump group.
Be ready to be in Milwaukee for the DNC convention. We're going to make 1978 look like a Girl Scout cookout. The cops are going to be the ones that are getting
I am a political prisoner. I was put in prison for practicing.
Wait a minute, you're a political
politics.
prisoner? Nelson Mandela was a political prisoner. Political prisoners have no due process and are unjustly jailed. You had a jury convict you.
But on August 17, 2010, he was convicted on only one of the 24 federal charges, a charge of lying to the FBI.
Does anyone else hear that?
Guys, got a order?
Mortars incoming. Get cover!
A charge of lying to the FBI.
Did Hillary Clinton lie?
To the FBI? We have no basis to conclude she lied to the FBI.
Did she lie to the public?
That's a question I'm not qualified to answer. I can speak about what she said to the FBI.
Did Hillary Clinton lie under oath?
Not to the FBI, not in a case we're working.
Did you review the documents where Congressman Jim Jordan asked her specifically, and she said, quote, "There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received," end quote.
I don't remember reviewing that particular testimony. I'm aware of that being said, though.
Did Hillary Clinton break the law?
In connection with her use of the email server, my judgment is that she did not.
Did you just not able to prosecute it, or did Hillary Clinton break the law?
Well, I don't want to give an overly lawyerly answer. The question I always look at is there evidence that would establish beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody engaged in conduct that violated a criminal statute? And my judgment here is there is not.
Building A, what's going on? Check in.
Get Deltas up on the roof now.
Blue, going external.
You had an unusual email arrangement, which meant the State Department could not produce your emails to us. You made exclusive use of personal email and a personal server. And when you left the State Department, you kept the public record to yourself for almost 2 years. And it was you and your attorneys who decided what to return and what to delete. Those decisions were your decisions, not our decisions. It was only in March of this year we learned of this email arrangement.
Jack, you believe this shit? Stop. Stop, you're gonna fuck it up even more. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah!
Hang in, hang in.
Dave's hurt really bad. Get somebody up there and sit him.
Roan, we need you in medical immediately. Over.
Answer, Roan.
Roan's not with us anymore.
Oz, how can I help?
Get me to medical.
Dave's gonna bleed out fast if you don't get up here.
You're gonna need some tourniquets.
Clear the table back there.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
The same time everybody else learned it through news reports.
Were you disappointed?
Let me just say that Hillary Clinton is and has been an outstanding public servant. She was a great Secretary of State for me. The policy of my administration is to encourage transparency.
Just about less than 30 minutes ago, Michael Flynn came out of that courthouse after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI. He did not make a comment to any of the reporters, and you can see, a huge number of cameras and reporters.
So another day of Hillary Clinton's emails and the Steele dossier. This while the President of the United States is lying about the FBI, attacking the FBI, and attacking the rule of law in this country. How does that make any sense at all? Republicans used to understand that the actions of a president matter, the words of a president matter, the rule of law matters, and the truth matters.
And did he ask for a pledge of loyalty from you? That's another thing he said.
No, he did not.
So he said those things under oath. Would you be willing to speak under oath to give your version of those events?
100%.
100%. He'd be willing to testify under oath. Do you think that's a good move for him?
Horrible.
And if I were his attorney, I would grab him by the ankle to prevent him from going into a room and giving sworn testimony, walk into a perjury trap. You never know the questions they're going to ask.
Well, the message from the president is that he has nothing to hide by saying that.
But that, Sandra, is not the point. The point is, if you are a lawyer, you do not. There's only one danger the president now faces. There's no Russia collusion. But in that landmine of specifics, they can be asked any kind of question that later is contradicted by something he said earlier, something he says later. Why open yourself to a perjury trap? Because that's his only vulnerability now.
Is this meant to be your shield, Lord Stark? A piece of paper.
And God bless America. Thank you very much.
I'm pleased you bent the knee to our queen. I would have advised it, had you asked. But have you ever considered learning how to lie every now and then? Just a bit?
I'm not going to swear an oath I can't uphold. Talk about my father if you want. Tell me that's the attitude that got him killed. But when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything. Then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. And lies won't help us in this fight.
That is indeed a problem. The more immediate problem is that we're fucked.
Well, I feel badly for General Flynn. I feel very badly. He's led a very strong life, and I feel very badly, John. I will say this. Hillary Clinton lied many times to the FBI. Nothing happened to her. Flynn lied, and they destroyed his life. I think it's a shame. Hillary Clinton, on the 4th of July weekend, went to the FBI, not under oath. It was the most incredible thing anyone's ever seen. She lied many times. Nothing happened to her. Flynn lied, and it's like they ruined his life. It's very unfair. Thank you very much.
On Twitter, the president said, quote, "It is my great honor to announce that General Michael Flynn has been granted a full pardon. Congratulations to General Flynn and his wonderful family. I know you will now have a truly fantastic Thanksgiving." Well, Flynn pleaded guilty in 2017 to lying to the FBI about his contacts with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. It was one of the first major courtroom victories for special counsel Robert Mueller. But about a year ago, Flynn tried to withdraw that guilty plea. His attorneys argued that he'd been entrapped by people like fired FBI agent Peter Strzok. And then this spring, Attorney General Bill Barr tried to have the case against Flynn dismissed. Barr accused Strzok of setting up a perjury trap. It was a charge that Strzok, at the time, dismissed as ludicrous.
A charge of lying to the FBI.
Our president is, he's tough and outspoken, and he has the courage to challenge the old way.
That's right.
He's the one who's actually fighting to bring real change. That's why he gets so much pushback.
You had appeals courts look at your sentencing, and you even appealed to the Supreme Court twice, and they refused to hear you. So you're hardly a political prisoner.
Well, first of all, Nelson Mandela went to before a court. He was convicted in a court of law. I had nearly 8 years to read books.
Right, by a racist apartheid government.
That's correct.
And not
but
a jury
I bet you
of
if
his
you were to
peers.
ask him, I bet you if you were to ask Nelson Mandela whether he thought the process was fair back in the early 60s in South Africa, he would say what I'm saying today, and that is the shocking fact.
I just got to stop you. I'm sorry. As someone who's worked in South Africa and saw apartheid, the idea that you are comparing yourself to somebody who has actually been railroaded by an apartheid system is just nuts and frankly, like, offensive.
Well, no, you're the one making the comparison, not me. I didn't bring up Nelson Mandela. You did. I am a political prisoner. I was put in prison for practicing.
Wait a minute, you're a political
politics.
prisoner? Nelson Mandela was a political prisoner. Political prisoners have no due process and are unjustly jailed. You had a jury convict you.
A charge of lying to the FBI.
Right, you're saying, like him, you were railroaded by an all-white jury for an oppressive regime?
No, I hear again, you're putting words in my mouth. I never said that either.
Okay.
No, what I'm saying is that I was thrown in prison and spent nearly 8 years in prison for practicing politics, for seeking campaign contributions without a quid pro quo. No express quid pro quo. And if I was given the same standard Senator Menendez was given, I could very well have been in the U.S. Senate instead of where I was.
Well, first and above all, I want to thank God because it is by His grace that I was delivered from an unjust prosecution. I'm so blessed to have two great children. And I love you so much, I can't.
Now, I'm not complaining that I'm not in the Senate, but I am complaining that I was sent to prison by a handful of corrupt prosecutors who are abusing their power. They're uncontrolled, and they're the ones that Chief Justice Breyer talked about when he said that our country is in trouble because of these uncontrolled prosecutors who can do just about anything they want to do and are using their power to go after government officials for what he called routine practices.
So let me just ask
that's
you.
What I went to prison for.
Okay.
In short time, the U.S. attorney at the time, Patrick Fitzgerald, would announce yet another Illinois governor was indicted. It was brought down in part by his own words.
The government recordings of the then governor were often the main attraction during trial.
I've got this thing, and it's golden. And I'm just not giving it up for nothing.
But there were other recordings in which Blagojevich could be heard providing his frank assessment of the people who wanted to be appointed to the Senate.
Continuing now with our lead story, Governor Blagojevich and Barack Obama. There is another element here. As you may know, the governor on tape said that Jesse Jackson Jr.'s people offered to raise $1 million if the congressman was appointed senator by the government. Jesse Jackson Jr. denies it.
I did not initiate or authorize anyone at any time to promise anything to Governor Blagojevich on my behalf. I never sent a message or an emissary to the governor to make an offer, to plead my case, or to propose a deal about a U.S. Senate seat, period.
However, he did meet with the governor for 90 minutes, just 2 days before the feds popped Blagojevich with it.
I mean, Jesse Jr., it's a repugnant thought to me. I can't believe anything he says. What he's got third parties saying to me is a heck of a lot more substantial than what we're getting from the Obama people, okay? I understand. But, you know, I don't believe him. I don't trust him. I used to like him. I don't like him anymore. You know, I think he's a bad guy.
I still believe in the power of forgiveness. I believe in the power of redemption. Today I manned up and tried to accept responsibility for the errors of my ways, and I still believe in the resurrection.
Well, that was former Illinois Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. after being sentenced to 30 months in federal prison for campaign finance fraud. Jesse, when you were sent away to prison, you even said to the family, forget me, leave me alone, I don't want any communication, because you were humiliated and embarrassed, you said. Just forget me.
I thought, Gil, that I had brought enough shame, enough embarrassment, and I was ashamed. I was catatonic during that period,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to be remembered. I didn't want to be a burden for my children. I didn't want to be a burden for my mother and father. Just let me go to prison and let me be.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was determined not to abandon me. And I saw men in prison who were abandoned.
This now with reaction Fox News analyst Mark Lamont Hill. You know, I like Jesse Jackson Jr. I had him on a show, and he was very good, but I think he's got some risk.
Oh, anyone has risks when a name surfaces in something like this.
Yeah, 2 days before, and on tape. The problem I'm having here is, why would a governor say on tape, when ostensibly he doesn't know he's being taped, Jesse Jackson Jr.'s people offered to raise $1 million for me if I give him the seat? Why would he do that? Why would he make that up?
I mean, I can only speculate, but we do know that Chicago politics are very, very dirty.
Yeah, it's just a matter of why he would do it.
No, but it's quite possible someone came in between and went to Blagojevich first, and then was going to go back to Jesse Jr. and say, look, I have a deal for you.
Every 2 minutes, here's another one of his past ghosts coming out to embarrass him again.
Well, first, I don't concede the fact that those are his past ghosts coming back. I think Bill Ayers and Jeremiah Wright have a right to talk, but I don't think they bear negatively on Barack Obama anymore. I think the American people are past that. I think he needs to stand up. I think he needs to demand Blagojevich get resign once again, and I think he needs to distance himself from all of this, but that's all he can do. The internal investigation of his own crew of people is significant. That's all you can do.
But
The controversy started with words spoken by the Reverend Jeremiah Wright in his sermons. In one of them, he blames America for a long history of military policies that he says caused the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks.
We bombed Hiroshima, we bombed Nagasaki, and we nuked far more than the thousands in New York and the Pentagon, and we never batted an eye.
Most Americans would not normally have heard about these sermons without Reverend Wright's connection to Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama. Wright is the retired pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ, where Obama is a member. Obama has called Wright his spiritual mentor and the man who brought him to Christ. But once the fiery pulpit remarks were made public in March and widely disseminated on the internet, Obama condemned them.
Moving forward, Reverend Wright does not speak for me. He does not speak for our campaign. I cannot prevent him from continuing to make these outrageous remarks, but what I do want him to be very clear about, as well as all of you and the American people, is that when I say I find these comments appalling, I mean it. It contradicts everything that I'm about.
Critics have said that your sermons are unpatriotic. How do you feel about America and about being an American?
I feel that those citizens who say that have never heard my sermons, nor do they know me. They are unfair accusations taken from sound bites and that which is looped over and over again on certain channels. I served 6 years in the military. Does that make me patriotic? How many years did Cheney serve? I stand before you to open up this two-day symposium with the hope that this most recent attack on the black church, it is not an attack on Jeremiah Wright, it is an attack on the black church. Black preaching is different from European and European American preaching. It is not deficient, it is just different. It is not bombastic, it is not controversial, it's different.
Are you disappointed that Senator Obama has chosen to walk away from you?
Whoever wrote that question doesn't read or watch the news. He did not denounce me. He distanced himself from some of my remarks, like most of you, never having heard the sermon.
Well, first, I don't concede the fact that those are his past goals coming back. I think Bill Ayers and Jeremiah Wright have a right to talk, but I don't think they bear negatively on Barack Obama anymore. I think the American people are past that.
Mr. Ayers, I don't care about an old washed-up terrorist, but as Senator Clinton said in her debates with you, we need to know the full extent of that relationship. We need to know the full extent of Senator Obama's relationship with Acorn, who is now on the verge of maybe perpetrating one of the greatest frauds in voter history in this country, maybe destroying a fabric of democracy. Same front outfit organization that your campaign gave $832,000 for quote, lighting and site selection. So all of these things need to be examined, of course.
I'm going to. Mr. Ayers has become the centerpiece of Senator McCain's campaign over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This has been their primary focus. So let's get the record straight. Bill Ayers is a professor of education in Chicago.
You know, people on the right said, no, he's lying. He's a secret Muslim, socialist, terrorist, something or other. And people on the left said, I think he's winking at me. Don't you feel him winking at us when he talks about those things? The one thing that Obama brings to the job that we should not take lightly is that he was a community organizer.
Mr. Saul Alinsky, who was born in Chicago in 1909, has become sort of the pet revolutionary of the church people of America, and for a fee, a very modest fee. Mr. Alinsky will come to your town, as he has to 40 others, to organize the poor.
When I talk about power, and I'm using it strictly as it's defined in Webster's Unabridged as the ability to act, I'm saying that people do not get power except when they take it, or when they're strong enough so that the other side gives it up, or at least gives up its what would be a compromise arrangement. Compromise to me is not a dirty word. I think if I had to define the whole democratic process in one word, I would choose that word. Because an ideology, to begin with, to have an ideology, you've got to have possession of a prime truth. Now, a Marxist starts off, he's got possession of a prime truth. One, prime truth. All problems that we have in our society are due to the exploitation of the proletariat by the capitalists. So then the ideology begins. You come to stage 2, obviously you get rid of the capitalists. Since they will not voluntarily cooperate and abdicate, you have what is known as a revolution. Stage 3, dictatorship of the proletariat and reorganizing the society. Stage 4, paradise on earth, communism. Any good Catholic Jesuit can get up here and give you the Catholic ideology. You start off with the prime truth. 1, the acceptance of the divinity of Christ, and you lead from there on. My problem, and the problem of any organizer in a free society for an open society, is one, he doesn't have a prime truth. Truth is relative and changing. And not having that prime truth to begin with, not having the reason for all the illnesses such as a Marxist has, he doesn't have the formula or the prescription, the answers. All that he can do in this situation is to simply assume one article of faith, and that is if the people have power as citizens, that they will meet each particular crisis and each particular issue as it comes along, and you cannot predict what they're going to be, so that you don't have a neat packaged political prescription.
Well, a lot of people don't know what a community organizer is, and in fact I didn't know what a community organizer was entirely when I became one. I had been inspired by the civil rights movement and the idea of people working at a grassroots level to bring about change, to get people involved in shaping their own destiny. It's something that I carry with me when I think about politics today, obviously at a different level and in a different place, but the same principles still apply.
But when he was asked pointedly, who would Martin Luther King support? And his response, you might remember, was King wouldn't support any of us. He'd be in the streets building a movement for justice and holding us accountable.
40 years ago, when I was 8 years old, he engaged in despicable acts with a radical domestic group. I have roundly condemned those acts.
Be ready to be in Milwaukee for the DNC convention. We're going to make 1978 look like a Girl Scout cookout. The cops are going to be the ones that are getting beaten in Milwaukee.
That's right. 50 years ago this week, the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago became a national spectacle as a major political event turned into chaos that culminated with a police riot, much of it unfolding on live national television. Was where the news was, where police were clubbing and tear gassing thousands of protesters.
We felt that the murder of Fred required us to be more grave, more serious, more determined to raise the stakes and not just be the white people who wrung their hands.
Is that one of the things we learned at that moment was that being allies to the Black Freedom Movement wasn't enough. The Black Panther Party said to us again and again, we don't need allies, we need partners. We need not charity, but solidarity. And at that moment, I think many of us moved from thinking of ourselves as dissidents and organizers, thinking of ourselves as revolutionaries, to transform this country from an imperialist, racist monster into a peaceful, joyful, and just place.
March 6th, 1970, 46 years ago today, the day homegrown terrorism blew a historic New York City home in a 19th century Greenwich Village townhouse. The bomb was being assembled by members of the Weather Underground, a radical left-wing group that took its name from the Bob Dylan lyric, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows."
Tonight, we make soap.
Really?
To make soap, first we render fat.
The salt balance has to be just right, so the best fat for making soap comes from humans.
Wait, what is this place?
A liposuction clinic. Pay dirt. Richest, creamiest fat in the world.
No! Don't pull it. As the fat renders, the tallow should float to the surface, like in Boy Scouts. Once the tallow hardens, you skim off a layer of glycerin. If you were to add nitric acid, you got nitroglycerin.
If you were then to add sodium nitrile and dash the sawdust, you got dynamite. Yeah, with enough soap, one could blow up just about anything.
Tyler was full of useful information.
With only a few seconds left, what's the future for you now? You won't be here forever. Inevitably, eventually you'll be out. You'll continue to operate the daycare center. Do you plan to marry?
Maybe. Wonderful. I don't know what the future is. I don't know. I'm so eager to be back with the children, and raising them is the centerpiece of my life. Mm-hmm. And what work we'll do and what political work we'll do, I don't know. We live here.
This is our country.
Are responsible for making it a good society.
Right. I assume you have grave misgivings about capitalism.
Yes.
Would you like to see that abolished?
I think that as long as it's based on profit, we'll have the violence to
Would it be
oppose
socialism or communism or a combination thereof?
How it will look in the United States, I don't know. I can't.
Declaration from both of you that under no circumstances ever again would you ever engage in a political action such as for example, a bombing.
Of a notion that people can be better, and of a notion that a movement can happen that can actually explode people's creative possibilities instead of diminish people, instead of make people powerless. That's what's changed. The system has not changed at all.
If I'm understanding you both, you cannot give us that statement.
That's correct.
Because we're talking about actions which endanger the lives of innocent people.
We did not take the lives of innocent people.
You certainly endangered them. If you had anything at all to do with the bombing, there's no way to bomb something without endangering the lives of innocent people.
Well, if we did 30 or 40 bombings and no one was hurt, then we were quite careful with the tactic. But the point
you'll
is,
agree that as long as we grant you your own conscience and freedom to make a decision to plant a bomb because you feel that the oppression is so great, and you in your own mind have come to believe that this is the only effective method of communication, then you have to give everybody else in a community of 230 million people the opportunity to make their own minds up about some grievance and plant a bomb in order to redress an injustice with which you may or may not agree. The result of this position is anarchy.
No, the result of this is the most violent society that's ever existed. You know what happens in the papers every day. You know how many people are armed.
10 years ago, he served and I served on a school reform board that was funded by one of Ronald Reagan's former ambassadors and close friends, Mr. Annenberg.
I am deeply troubled by the violence in some grade schools and high schools. And if this continues, it will not only erode the educational system, but will destroy our way of life in the United States. Now, that's a pretty strong statement, but I believe that we have got to reverse what is going on in our country. It's obligatory. We must ask ourselves whether improving education will halt the violence. If anyone can think of a better way, we may have to try that. I do not believe the Annenberg Foundation's $500 million challenge grant over 5 years will do the whole job. This must be a challenge to the nation. At this point, I can't see any other way to guarantee our nation's future.
Walter Annenberg was giving his very brief statement. It reminded me of a comment that the president with the best developed mind, Thomas Jefferson, once said. He said, if I had more time, I could write shorter letters. Walter and Lenore Annenberg have done a remarkable and truly wonderful thing on this day. In giving the largest private gift in American history to the future of America's children. It could not have come at a better time. In a moment, all of you will repair to another place and discuss in greater details exactly what this gift will do and how it will be done. But since I spent the better part of my life in public service laboring to improve public education, I want the press and the American people to know that there are two things that are important about this gift. Its size and the way the money is going to be spent.
No, the result of this is the most violent society that's ever existed. You know what happens in the papers every day. You know how many people are armed.
Stay back. Don't get pushed down.
It's been said that in order to go through the front gates of the Annenberg estate, you had to be or had to have been the President of the United States. The exclusive nature of the Annenberg estate cannot be minimized. Informally called Camp David West, Sunnylands was designed as a part-time home for the Annenbergs and as an ultra-exclusive retreat for heads of state. Presidents Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, and George W. Bush all came to the estate during their presidencies. And though most presidential visits were filled with golf, tennis, and general relaxation, it was also a hiding place of sorts for embattled friends of the Annenbergs.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
After his resignation in August of 1974, President Richard Nixon flew directly from the White House to the Annenberg estate. And in 1979, as Islamic fundamentalists were overthrowing the Shah of Iran, the Shah's family took refuge in the Rancho Mirage estate.
Walter Annenberg, a millionaire publisher, has invited the Shah to his estate.
There was a New Year's Eve party every year that Ronald Reagan was president, which Reagan came to.
Of course, Ronald Reagan, during his presidency, came here every New Year's Eve to celebrate New Year's Eve with members of his cabinet.
The Annenbergs themselves also made history, as they are both, technically speaking, ambassadors. Annenberg sold his empire to Rupert Murdoch's News Corp for $3 billion.
I was reading my copy of the New York Times the other day, okay? And I knew you guys would react that way, okay? So I'm reading the New York Times, though. And I was really interested to read about Brock's friends from Chicago, as the New York Times reported. Now, it turns out one of his earliest supporters is a man named Bill Ayers. And according to the New York Times, he was a domestic terrorist and part of a group that, quote, launched a campaign of bombings that would target the Pentagon and our U.S. Capitol. And then there's even more to the story. Barack Obama says that Ayers was just someone in the neighborhood, but that's less than truthful. His own top advisors said that they were, quote, certainly friendly. In fact, Obama held one of his first meetings of his political career in Bill Ayers' living room. And they've worked together on various projects in Chicago, and, you know, these are the same guys who think that patriotism is paying higher taxes.
An early organizing meeting for your state Senate campaign was held at his house, and your campaign has said you were friendly. Can you explain that relationship for the voters and explain to Democrats why it won't be a problem?
George, but this is an example of what I'm talking about. This is a guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a professor of English in Chicago, who I know and who I have not received some official endorsement from. He's not somebody who I exchange ideas from on a regular basis. The notion that somehow, as a consequence of me knowing somebody who engaged in detestable acts 40 years ago when I was 8 years old, somehow reflects on me and my values doesn't make much sense, George.
Barack Obama says that Ayers was just someone in the neighborhood, but that's less than truthful.
Well, I think that is a fair general statement, but I also believe that Senator Obama served on a board with Mr. Ayers for a period of time, the Woods Foundation, which was a paid directorship position. And if I'm not mistaken, that relationship with Mr. Ayers on this board continued after 9/11 and after his reported comments, which were deeply hurtful to people in New York. And I would hope to every American, because they were published on 9/11, and he said that he was just sorry they hadn't done more. And what they did was set bombs, and in some instances, people died.
Bill Ayers and his wife, Bernadine Dorn, in the 1960s and 70s were radicals, members of the Weather Underground, an anti-Vietnam War group that bombed federal buildings, including the U.S. Capitol and the Pentagon. Barack Obama confirmed during a primary debate that he knew Ayers, and when pressed, said they served on a charitable foundation board together, and Obama condemned Ayers' support of violence. One place their paths repeatedly crossed, according to a CNN review of board minutes and other records, was Chicago's Annenberg Challenge Project, where a $50 million grant from the Annenberg Foundation matched locally raised funds to improve schools.
I do not believe the Annenberg Foundation's $500 million challenge grant over 5 years will do the whole job. This must be a challenge to the nation.
According to participants and project records, Bill Ayers fought to bring the Annenberg grant to Chicago. Barack Obama was recruited as its chair. For 7 years, Bill Ayers and Obama, among many others, worked on funding for education projects, including some experiments supported by Ayers. Stanley Kurtz, a conservative researcher for the Ethics and Public Policy Center, has also been reviewing the recently released records of Chicago's Annenberg Challenge.
Instead of giving money directly to schools, they gave money to what they called external partners. And these external partners were often pretty radical community organizer groups.
And the board gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to Bill Ayers' Small Schools Project, promoting alternative education like the Peace School, with a curriculum centered around a United Nations theme, and another school where the focus was African American studies.
I want the press and the American people to know that there are two things that are important about this gift. Its size and the way the money is going to be spent.
And this was directly funded by Annenberg?
Oh, yes.
Under Obama's chairmanship?
Oh, yes, and the specific job of the board of directors was to give out the money.
But I also believe that Senator Obama served on a board with Mr. Ayers for a period of time, the Woods Foundation, which was a paid directorship position.
While continuing work on the Annenberg Challenge, Barack Obama and Bill Ayers also served together on a second charitable foundation, the Woods Fund. Among its recipients, Jeremiah Wright's Trinity United Church, where Obama attended.
Are you disappointed that Senator Obama has chosen to walk away from you?
Whoever wrote that question doesn't read or watch the news. He did not denounce me. He distanced himself from some of my remarks, like most of you, never having heard the sermon.
Ayers has strong defenders in Chicago, among them Richard Daley, the mayor, who called Ayers a valued member of the Chicago community. The city gave Ayers its Citizen of the Year award in 1997 for his work on the Annenberg Project. For Obama, the chairmanship of the $100 million Annenberg board helped vault him from Southside Chicago lawyer to political player, and that, too, has another connection to Bill Ayers. In 1995, months after the little-known Barack Obama became Annenberg Project chair, State Senator Alice Palmer introduced the young Obama as her political heir apparent. Where was that introduction made? At the home of the 60s radicals, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. The Obama campaign again says it is just a coincidence.
And Dr. Quentin Young, a retired doctor, told us this indeed was Barack Obama's political coming out party, and it was hosted by Bill Ayers.
Now Stephanopoulos was bearing down on the general theme of patriotism in your relationships. A gentleman named William Ayers, Stephanopoulos began. He was part of the Weather Underground in the 70s. They bombed the Pentagon and other places. He's never apologized for any of that. An early organizing meeting for your state Senate campaign was held at his house, and your campaign has said that you are, quote, friendly. Can you explain that relationship for the voters and explain to Democrats why it won't be a problem? Obama replied, "This is a guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a professor of English or something in Chicago, who I know and who I have not received some official endorsement from. I sat down and a student turned to me and said, 'Oh my God, that guy has the same name as yours.'" Why not? Radicals and progressives and revolutionaries and others spend way too much time gazing at the sites of power that we have no access to, the White House and that kind of medieval auction house called the Congress. And we stare longingly in that direction, wondering, will they ever serve us? And the answer is, not really. What we should be doing is focusing on the sites of power that we have absolute access to, the neighborhood, the street, the community, the classroom, the workplace. This is where we can mobilize power. And I think Obama also gave us a hint of that. There's many, many wonderful things in his Dreams from My Father. I think it's a marvelous book. I know I wrote it, and so I ought to know how marvelous it is.
President Trump made news this morning with the claim that he could pardon himself. He made news several days ago when he pardoned our next guest, conservative author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza, who tweeted recently about it, writing, quote, "Obama and his stooges tried to extinguish my American dream and destroy my faith in America. Thank you, at Real Donald Trump, for fully restoring both."
But the key point here is that no American in this country's history has been prosecuted, let alone locked up, for doing what I did. Typically, these cases are prosecuted when there's corruption involved, some sort of quid pro quo.
One of the things I think is also catastrophic in it is that the political system is something that's now for sale. It's on the auction block. And Dinesh referred to his time in custody. Were you in custody? I'm not sure. He had an assistant.
I was in overnight custody.
He had an assistant drop him off at his sleeping quarters overnight. I offered to write him a letter to the judge asking him not to put Dinesh in prison. He turned it down because I was going to advocate that he go to North Carolina and register voters, which would fit the crime of corrupting the political process in New York. But no, I think the criminal justice system is deeply corrupt, and it's corrupted by politics.
The inequity of our criminal justice system is on full display right on this podium right here. So I gave $20,000 of my own money over the campaign finance limit. I got 8 months in overnight confinement.
8 months or 8 years?
8 months.
You said 8 years.
You bombed the Pentagon and tried to bomb all kinds of other things.
What are you cheering for?
How much time did you do in the slammer?
No, the fact is that
10 years ago, he served and I served on a school reform board that was funded by one of Ronald Reagan's former ambassadors and close friends, Mr. Annenberg.
Let me say in terms of 4 men. Tony Rezko we've named. He's Syrian-born. He's been in Chicago a long time. He graduated from the Illinois Institute of Technology.
What a fucking summer that was.
Later that year, Maurice and I helped organize one of the first black voting drives.
Maurice, were you around for Anthony Imperiale, the White Knight?
Around? Who do you think he was fighting against? Italian pride. Keep Newark white. Aspiring Klansmen, some of those boys.
So this group you got now, the Urban Housing League, what's the story there?
Like many nonprofits, we fallen on hard times. Republican administration plus a proliferation of new charities post 9/11.
Well, it sounds like you three got a lot to talk about. I'm gonna hit the showers. Maurice, nice meeting you.
Same here.
Senator Obama went out of his way today to avoid reporters and their questions. It was this morning's Chicago Sun-Times, as you point out, that reported that many of the buildings that Tony Rezko was supposed to transform into affordable housing are today unlivable or boarded up. 11 of those buildings are in what was State Senator Barack Obama's district. Buildings like this one in the 7,000 block of South Sangamon. What we wanted to ask Obama was what he knew about Rezko's management or mismanagement of those buildings while Obama was state senator. During the late 1980s and through the 1990s, Tony Rezko and his company secured approximately $100 million in grants, loans, and federal housing tax credits to rehab units in 30 dilapidated Chicago buildings, according to the Sun-Times. Times investigation.
I took the liberty of filling Maurice in on the broad strokes.
Okay, we got a guy. Dr. Fried is a urologist. We're going to give him $500,000 of our money, have him grab up these 4 houses on Garside Street for $125,000 a piece.
The old first war.
Once we own the houses, we got an appraiser who played ball. He's going to reappraise them in the $300,000 range. What you do, Maurice, is you take the phony appraisals to HUD. Tell them your urban housing league wants to buy up these shitholes, convert them into low-cost housing for working families. Once HUD guarantees the mortgage up, you take it to the bank. They cut a check, and we work it up nice.
At which point I assume my organization fails to make the mortgage payment.
Unforeseen construction delays and repeated vandalism forced the project into dissolution. We all walk away from the houses.
Your cut will be in the 10% of the profit range.
My office will write a letter in strong support of your application.
Sounds about right.
Many were on the South Side, where Barack Obama once worked as a community activist. He was elected to the Illinois legislature in 1996. Obama also was an attorney and worked in the law firm that did legal work for Resco's company. Resco was also a major campaign contributor to Obama and served on his finance committee when he ran for U.S. Senate.
I'm going to make some mistakes every once in a while.
There's a second name that's important here. His name is William Ayers. You used it. Billy Ayers of the Weather People. Not a casual acquaintance, but he's not Barack Obama's generation. He's more a mentor to Barack Obama. They've known each other at least since '95. Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn were principals in Barack Obama's first run for the state Senate. In fact, they found a Meet the Candidate dinner meeting at their home in 1995. They've served together on a critical philanthropy in Chicago, the Woods Fund. They've given money to important people in Chicago. They know each other a long time. Bill Ayers was on the New York Times on September 11th, quoted as saying there was an eloquence to bombs. He's not an attractive character for a president to hang out with without answering what he learned from Bill Ayers all those years serving together.
You know, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. But I do get a sense sometimes now among certain young people, and this is accelerated by social media, there is this sense sometimes of the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people. And that's enough. Like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or used the wrong verb, or then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself because, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. Let me get on TV, watch my show, watch Grownish. You know, that's not activism. That's not bringing about change.
How's it go, Eskimo? Eskimo. Tell me what you know, Eskimo. Eskimo. How you feel, Eskimo? Eskimo. Tell me what you feel, Eskimo. I'm Jeremiah Wright, 'cause tonight I'm the preacher. I got a bookish look and you're all hot for teacher. Todd looking fine on his snow machine. So hot for each other, need a go-between. In Wastilla, we just chill, baby chiller. But when I see oil, it's drill, baby driller. All the Mavericks in the house, put your hands up. All the Mavericks in the house, put your hands up. All the plumbers in the house, put your hands up. All the plumbers in the house, put your hands up. When I say Obama, you say Ayers. Obama, Ayers. Obama, Ayers. I built me a bridge, it ain't going nowhere. McCain, Palin, gonna put the nail in the coffin of the media elite. She likes red meat. Shoot a mother humping loose 8 days of the week. Now you're dead. Now you're dead 'cause I'm an animal. And I'm bigger than you. Holding a shotgun, working the pump. Everybody party, we're going amok. La 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 la.
That if they played all the tapes, which they didn't do, they put a seal order on the tapes, wouldn't allow me to play tapes in court. Tape recordings that they made that prove that everything I'm saying is true about what they did to me, I think the result would have been very different.
that. You betcha.
No expression, hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kinda funny, I find it kinda sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Large and open.